All right, it's time for a creative conversation. We talk a lot about how important it is to get noticed in this industry and to stand out. There's a lot of different ways to do that, but one of the key things when it comes to marketing is to have good creative, to make sure that our creative is working harder for us and really doing that work to differentiate. And it's time to take a look, especially, I'm looking at you, B2B brands, to take a look at what we're doing and start to break down the barriers that are holding us back from really elevating and exploring great creative opportunities.
Can I say it? Let's dig in.
So we've been chatting recently about this kind of slow burn that we're seeing happening in building materials when it comes to creative risks and ways that brands are trying to stand out. And we've been asking ourselves, what's happening here? We've taken a lot of steps in this industry. We're miles ahead of where we used to be, but there still seems to be something holding brands back, especially when it comes to B2B in this space. So I thought it'd be interesting to bring our creative director, Mike Llewellin, on to share his perspective and really some of his expertise when it comes to how we can push ourselves further in this area. So Mike, thanks for joining me today. I really appreciate it.
Appreciate being here, Jen.
And so, as I mentioned, we've been talking a lot about this, which is why I'm excited to have you here. So in your perspective, what are you kind of seeing in the building materials industry and when it comes to kind of these gaps or where creative is going?
When you look at the building materials space right now, there's more competition than there's ever been. But with that, there's a lack of differentiation. So many are out there trying to say their piece, but they're all kind of saying the same thing because they're focused in on price, product, and promotion. It's been a long-standing aspect of B2B marketing. But with that digital shift, we have to change how we're operating now. And so Jeff Lancaster of the LinkedIn B2B Institute, he's talked about the 95 to 5 rule, where 5% of your audience is actually in market right now, but 95% are sitting firmly on the fence. They're a year away from making a decision. So if you're going to focus all of your attention on price and promotion, it's difficult to be memorable for an audience that isn't buying for another year. You have to find ways to become memorable. And doing that is really bringing forward what your brand strategy and creative strategy is, creating that emotional response within your marketing.
Yeah, and that's a fantastic point, actually, especially when it comes to building materials, because we know that these projects are so long and complex. The buying cycles are so lengthy in some cases that you need to make sure that no matter where they are in that you're present and that you're able to stand out in a way that's meaningful.
B2B brands need to spend more time not just engaging with their audience, but exciting them, because you don't want to just tell the full story from that first touch point. You have time. You have a year. We've mentioned that. And there is also the upper, mid, and lower funnel as part of all of that journey. There's a lot to say within that space. So trying to say it all in the upper funnel isn't really doing you justice. B2B brands can spend a lot more time trying to engage and excite their audiences rather than just trying to tell them that complete story, and kind of borrowing what their B2C counterparts are doing. Because there's no reason a B2B brand can't do what our B2C counterparts are doing. But in this digital first world, the playing field has been leveled. You're not questing after a national TV buy. We have many different tactics to be able to use at our disposal. The creative that you produce can be just as interesting, just as emotional, just as funny as B2C, because that is what you're trying to accomplish, is speaking to that human. If it is human to human, you need to be able to speak to them on their level.
That's a really good point, because I find that that's actually one of the areas when you talk about, excitement, humor, being funny, being lighthearted, playful. Those are areas where brands, especially in B2B building materials, have a tough time playing.
If we're talking about trying to be unexpected, using humor is definitely a way in, because it's not really seen across the building material space, because like you're saying, you need to be professional, and professional is seen as being straightforward and direct and confident. But there's a sense of humor can still come forward through confidence, because, and I'm not saying that it needs to be funny, haha. You don't have to render a belly laugh, just a smirk or a smile, just any sort of feeling that you can be able to cause an emotional reaction where they have an idea of what it's like to work with you. Because brands aren't just logos, they aren't just word marks and taglines, they are the people behind that brand. And so if you're able to actually show who you are through the language that you're choosing, you're able to show your audience member what it's like to work with you.
And I think you hit the nail on the head with the unexpected, because, we're talking about humor, we're talking about how to use that properly and how it comes across, but it doesn't always have to be humor. But no, the unexpected is actually what's the most powerful in being able to grab that recognition and get noticed, right?
Absolutely.
So for me, this really brings up an area that I find is very untapped or unexplored when it comes to building materials in B2B, and that's all around personality and really having a well-defined and distinct personality. So, we talked about how a lot of brands want to come off as professional and experts, and maybe they want to be approachable and authentic. Those are kind of some of the more standard ways that brands like to represent themselves. However, when it gets really interesting and when you're seeing more brands stand out from that sea of sameness, as we talk about, is when they're able to play with different archetypes, when they're able to define areas like charismatic, sharp-witted. Maybe they're more caring, or, different areas that open up different parts of the human emotion and human connection that people can relate to, kind of see themselves in, and really appreciate about a brand.
It takes a lot of effort to be able to decide what your personality is through the brand strategy. And you're not just one thing, right? There's 3 to 5 personality traits that are alive at any given time, because a brand is much like a person. But it's a matter of being able to ensure that what your personality traits are don't become claims. You don't simply rely on the fact that you are approachable by saying that you are approachable. You have to prove that you are approachable. And that comes together through your concepts, through your communications, through the copy and all the touch points all the way throughout the funnel.
So I love this kind of path we took down talking about personality. I think it's so fundamental for, helping brands stand out and get noticed in this space. But I also want to bring it back to just talking about good creative as a whole. What's behind that? What fuels that creativity process?
In short, one word: audience. The best creative, period, whether it's B2B or B2C, has the audience in mind. But as we've said earlier, B2B can be more of a one-way communication at times, because you're trying to make sure they understand all the benefits that you could possibly provide. But being able to have the audience at the heart of your idea and your communications is paramount, because an audience wants to see themselves in what you have to say, because then they'll already understand that you get me from go. Right? That you've put in the effort to not just build yourself up. You've done that for a reason, to make sure that you're solving an audience's problem. And the best way forward is to be able to have a strong human insight, that in-depth understanding that your audience is going through, their needs, their pain points, their preferences, their behaviors. But it's not just about the audience in that standpoint. Like, you're not just trying to make sure that your communications are correct for them. It's being able to inspire your team. Human insight is as much about the audience as it is about the creatives working on the problem you're trying to solve. Because if you're able to have one human insight that the creatives, the clients, everyone can rally around, while a brief is multiple pages long with lots of information, lots of background and objectives, if you're able to distill human insight to one simple phrase or question, anybody can help solve that. So you're widening who's involved in creating the creative itself.
So you make a really good point there when it comes to the human insight. And I think that that's something that a lot of people overlook. They get really excited to get ads out there. They get excited to get all their content out into the world. but it's all about them. It's not rooted in that insight about their audiences, about their customers, and like you said, about their pain points and how to really, meaningfully solve their challenges. And a lot of the great work that we see out there, a lot of the examples in the industry are really fueled by fantastic insights.
And to steal inspiration from the B2C side of things, work we did alongside PPG Paints and their Glidden Paints brand focused in on the fact that the industry had a misconception, right? That painting, at-home painting, DIY projects, it's something you look forward to do. You can be done in a weekend. Everything's so easy. But in reality, it's a lot of work.
Yeah, like, out there's all of those images of, not actual painting in ball gowns, but they might as well be. They're so happy and there's not a speck of paint on them and everything is so lovely and what a happy weekend. But there's a lot of headaches that come from that.
There's a lot that goes into it. There's a lot of sweat, there's a lot of tears, there's a lot of arguments, maybe a little bit of crying. But there's all of that effort is worth it. It just takes a lot to get there. And so the product itself, it's affordable, it's easy to apply. There's a lot of things that make that process smoother. But through the Glidden work, we wanted to focus in on the reality, being able to prove that we understand what you're going through. Mm-hmm. We have made our product easier to apply and more affordable to help you. Not because it just makes good business sense, but it makes sense for you, the audience member. So we were able to create an entire campaign that was focused on the reality. It was called Let's Be Real. And it just got into the fact that, it's a lot of tears and arguments around color swatches and who's going to apply what when, but it's all worth it. And being able to speak to an audience on their level, it brings you into the conversation, as we've been talking about. We get them, so then they get us.
So examples like this I find are really great to illustrate, what it takes to really get there, what it takes to really have that strong creative that's going to connect with your customers. And I'm sure that we can all think of really great examples out there that were fueled by these deep human insights. So for our brands who are watching today, who want to take more risks, who want to elevate their creative, and who want to better connect with their audience to really improve what they're doing in the building materials space, what are some of the recommendations or tips or things that they could start doing tomorrow to really make this change?
Absolutely. One key thing to do is that when you fall in love with an idea is to not just fall in love with that form of the idea. Know that this idea is going to live on for weeks to months to even years. And audience members are going to change within all of that flow, and their behaviors and preferences will also change. So you need to be able to elaborate on the story that you're starting to tell. So taking the time to ensure that your story can evolve. So whether or not you're not trying to say everything all at once, you're timing yourself, you're being patient, creating that tension, creating that excitement, and be able to tell that long form story. And as we've said, you have to show your personality in everything you do. The fun doesn't just happen in the upper funnel. You need to be able to have your personality shown all the way from the upper funnel down to conversion. Even in loyalty, once they've already become a customer, how you keep them is to keep your personality going and ensure that you're still top of mind for them, because they'll just be rebuying one day, and that's something that we can also be a part of.
Yeah, that's a really good filter to have too, is making sure that no matter the touch point, no matter what you're putting out, that you're able to live to that. Like, even emails, not necessarily billing and invoices. I know those are fairly boring, but, all of those customer communications that maybe are straightforward, but infused with that personality can just be that reminder of why they chose you and why they should continue choosing you in the future.
Absolutely. Great point. That creative isn't just the creative, right? It's every communication that does live on. It's your email nurture content. It's social. And it can be the form that leads you to that invoice. It's not the invoice itself, but the navigation you take to get there can still absolutely have your personality in place. And lastly, easy for me to say, but breaking out of your comfort zone. We've talked a lot about how this industry has been reliant on product and price. What if you created a campaign that doesn't show the visual of a product at all? That you're just instead able to focus in on those real life benefits. And it's obviously just one suggestion, one way forward, but being able to connect with your audience in ways that you haven't done before, elevating the quality of your creative, looking at new tactics, focusing in on video, embracing AI, it's ways that you can stand out from the competition.
You bring up a really good point around AI, which is something I wanted to touch on as well, because we get a lot of questions in this area. And of course, it's a hot topic right now. But what is the role of AI when it comes to creative?
Yeah, it's definitely it's a household name, of course. It's something that we are encouraging clients to look into, and we're encouraging ourselves to look into, because we are definitely not able to move forward without embracing AI. But the way that the programs are structured is that they're producing content, the generative content, on things that have already been produced in the past. So just ensuring that you're using it as a tool, but not the solution. It's not just a matter of putting a keyword phrase, putting the prompt forward and having your problem solved for you. It's just a way for us to be able to produce faster and get into market quicker.
Yeah, and great perspective there, because when it comes to AI, you're right. It's really helped us get a lot further in what we're able to do and capabilities without having to do, for example, original photography and all of these things that would normally hold up processes and maybe limit creative capabilities for different brands out there, just depending on their size and what they're able to do. But with lots of brands tapping into this capability, you want to make sure that you're not getting back into that repetitive nature, and that you're still able to bring that unique insight that drives that creativity and output. I really appreciate you coming on, Mike, and sharing your perspective here. You and I have been talking about this a lot, but there has been a lot of transformation in this industry in building materials marketing, and a lot of, starting to push the boundaries and stepping out of comfort zones, but a lot more that can be done. And it's an exciting time to watch.
I couldn't agree more. I think this is the most exciting time that this industry has ever faced. There's a hunger and an appetite for differentiation and being able to tell those unique stories, and brands really owning who they are. And I can't wait to see what's next.
Excellent. And on that note, thanks for listening.